perspectives of the one direction that is through the 60, the 3, the 14, the 2, the 1, and the 8. And in the end, attracting attention is a style question. Always. So, teaching people how to have the right style to attract attention is very important. And it covers many, many areas in the spectrum. The 31st gate, influence. The third line speaks so clearly about one of the basic dilemmas of the not-self. It's the line of selectivity. It says the ability to carefully assess and choose the proper influence, and to tailor one's behavior accordingly. The capacity to lead enhanced through association with the proper influences. There is no end to hierarchies. It means in order to be influential, you need to be influenced properly. That's something to think about. And it's something to deeply recognize. It's why that the people that pay the most for consultancy are executives who are already influential. It's not like workers are paying for consultants to teach them how to become executives. It's really something to understand that the only way that you can truly be influential in the collective sense is that you have to take in other collective influences. You need them. And remember that being influenced isn't the same as being controlled. It isn't the same as being led or handled. It is simply being guided. And this is the essence of being able to maintain a basic pattern into the future. Is that those that are influencing that direction remain open to being influenced, to recognizing that A, they can't afford to be rigid, that the theory doesn't necessarily work in practice, on and on and on. So selectivity is very important. It's one of the things that is natural to my work in the business areas of design application, that is with the human consulting system. In dealing within the context of the human consulting system, everything about human consulting is about genetic engineering, and genetic engineering ruled through selectivity. It's all about selection. It's all about selection. And in the end, this tells us one of the great truths of design, that is that, if you're correct, then you have the right forces in your life. If you have the right forces in your life, then you will have the right kinds of influences in your life. I'm a very powerful man in terms of my influence. And yet at the same time, I'm not without forces that influence me. From my children upwards. There's all kinds of influences in my life that I take into consideration, that are part of keeping me attuned to the way in which I operate in the world as somebody who is influencing others. And remember, I'm a 7, not a 31. So I sell influence. Really see all that. It's just mechanical. It's just mechanical. And again, we know because it's mechanical, it's going to be this or that. We're going to have influence that is really negative and unproductive. Leadership for good or bad is the keynote. There are Saddam Husseins. There are creatures like that. There are good and bad in all influences. The 20th gate. And it is a key to being here. Recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action. There's nothing like being on your toes. Being ready. It's one of the things that, when the voice said to me, "Are you ready to work?" He said, "Are you ready?" It said, "Are you ready?" And work for a non-sacral. but it said, ready, ready, yes, yes, I was ready. And that's my pure existential nature. My existential nature is that at any time, at any moment, I'm here. This is the 20th gate. This is the perfection of the 20th gate. That you're on your toes. That you're alert acoustically. That you're there. And that you're there to be able to respond. You're there to be able to act. You're there to be able to manifest spontaneously in the moment. And yet, the third line thematic is self-awareness. Understanding derived from analysis of personal actions and effects. And this is one of the things about relationships. It's one of the things about love. It's one of the things about running a business. Is that at some point, analysis of personal actions and effects are necessary. Every action has a reaction. Something that every manifester is here to learn. And inherent in the 20th gate is this deep recognition that actions create reactions and they need to be assessed personally. That if you're working in an organization, your work has to be assessed. You need feedback. You cannot run a business without feedback. And remember that the 2034, being the only archetypal manifesting, generating channel, is the only one that's here to be structured. One of the many things I taught in America was the relationship between the 2034 to manifesting generators, to the 2034 to the 4323. They're both oppositions in the wheel that become defined channels, and they're directly related to each other. Directly related to each other through general circuitry as individuality. And it's one thing to understand about the 2034 is that the only force that is here for it is the 4323. It's here to be structured. It's here to be guided in that sense to a structure. Now this is one of the essential things to recognize. Is that the 20th gate, despite the fact that it has this spontaneous capacity, its structure, its efficiency needs to be worked on. Needs to be guided. And so the moment that you're dealing with any kind of enterprise, the moment that you're, a small business and you have one employee, it's not enough to just give them a paycheck. You really have to be able to assess with them and discuss with them their progress. What's going on? Very, very important. And in the now of that, understanding derived from analysis of personal actions and effects. So, your salesperson does something and it backfires and there's a real problem, that's not something to gloss over. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with right away. And again, this is one of the things about businesses is that we let things slide. We let things slide until they become bad habits. Remember, the 20 connects to the 10. It connects to the behavioral reality. And then the bad habits are hard to fix. They're hard to fix. And if you got a boom and bust, and you got hard to fix bad habits, you're going to crash before the 7-year cycle. You just will. The 16th gate. The great art. What a heading for a gate. Eh? No gate has such a, the great art of enriching life, my goodness, by the harmonic channeling of energy. It started off sounding really, what the hell is all that about? 16th gate. 16th gate. Independence. Talent. Channel of talent. The only way to perfect talent is through ego inflation. Remember ego inflation in the 15? Okay? We're in the same circuitry now. Okay, so think about talent. Everything about talent is self-generating and sustaining enthusiasm. Self-generating and sustaining enthusiasm. And one of the things about talent, in order for talent to emerge, remember, it's about the harmonic channeling. That's what the talent is all about. You know, the musician that's in the flow, you know, and all of that is there. But in order to be able to bring the talent out, you need identification. Without identification, talent can never become mastery. It's just something where you recognize somebody has a gift, you know, but they never master that gift. And one of the things that's necessary is that despite the fact that this is collective, it's collective. 16th gate, it needs to be shared. Talent needs to be shared. But talent isn't going to have impact until it gets to a place of being mastered. And talent is only mastered when it's encouraged. When it's encouraged to be hierarchical. You know, when the child comes to you and they're learning the violin, you cannot say to them what may be the truth. That you will always be seventh violin in the orchestra of life. They will never become even good musicians. They won't. And you see, the assumption here is that this is self-generating and sustaining enthusiasm. But I really want you to understand something. It isn't. It isn't. It's about proper timing. But it is more than anything else about being guided to being enthusiastic. When I see emerging talent in someone, you know, I encourage them. I was always, as a teacher, somebody that was here to positively reinforce. Oh, what a wonderful picture, I say to my son. You know, wonderful picture. Oh, you're a wonderful artist. You're great. You know, and the reality is that that brings out an enthusiasm to experiment with more art, to make another picture and another picture. I have so many pictures, you know, and they get better. He gets better as a talent because he's beginning to get his own sustained enthusiasm, but that enthusiasm has to be collectively encouraged. So there is a wonderful thing to understand about the 16th gate and teaching people how to attract attention. You teach them how to attract attention by giving them attention. You know, you give them attention, and you give them positive attention, and you will see how valuable that is. And you teach them positive attention, you know? I mean, people wonder why rock bands have groupies. You know, and they always, you know, snicker at the obvious. But it isn't about that. In the end, it's about people who are always encouraging them that they are the best and the greatest. Oh, we love your music. Puts us into a trance. It's wonderful. It's great. You're wonderful. You're marvelous. They need that. They need that. You know, I've done my best teaching when I'm with students who have been with me a long time. You know, there is the encouragement of their love of our process together. And because they're there, and because of that encouragement, it drives me to be an even better teacher. That I don't want you to come to a class of mine and you walk away and say, the last one was better. I love it when you walk away and say, I didn't think he could do it, but this one's even better than the last one. And you know, that's how it works. You know, you can sell that stuff. I mean, the world's a business. You can sell anything. Eh? Anything, 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 anything. Let me sell you some crisis. By design. 35th gate. By design. I love that one. Eh? You know, it's like God saying, this is the way it is. By design. Progress cannot exist in a vacuum. Gee, rocket science stuff, eh? Progress cannot exist in a vacuum and is dependent on interaction. Let me share expectation with you. There is nothing more incredible about the 35th gate. You know, it's a single chemistry codon. It's the only gate of a specific codon, tryptophan. And 35th gate is really interesting. It's like something very odd that's sort of the program went, boop, you know, like, let's see what this brings, eh? You know, the 35th gate is the great gate of expectation. Expectation. Oh, how that sells. Remember that underlying the third line is the third color, and it's the color of desire, and this is the gate that manifests desire. And it is the desire to have a fulfilled expectation. And boy, do we sell expectations. If you go through this process for 7 years as yourself, you're going to be as awake as Buddha. Hey, it sells, eh? Well, it does, you know? And it's really good. Everybody's walking around, 2 more years to Buddhahood. I only have to buy 6 more courses. I'm going to get there sooner or later. Ah, don't I love it? It works, by the way. That's the nice thing, you know. Otherwise, I'm in trouble. I wouldn't tell you my secrets. By design. And look at the third line theme of the 35. It says, by design, you've got to be filled with the need for expectation, but collaborate. Ah, God. Collaborate. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah, it's one of my favorite scientific facts. Wonderful statement. The whole is always greater, always greater, always greater than the sum of its parts. Always. And here's this wonderful third line collaboration. Benefic encouragement of others. Right? No, really. Let me tell you, if we do it in the canoe, it's going to be wonderful. Benefic encouragement. You know, it's going to be a rewarding experience for us, really, that expands personal as well as communal progress. The ability to bring progressive change into others' lives. It's collaboration. So expectation is never sold to one person. You know? You sell expectation to couples. You're going to be happy and fulfilled in your long relationship to each other. You can expect to grow old with each other deep in, you know. We sell binary expectations to begin with. Yeah, I think she might go for it. You know? Binary expectations. Always. And you see, this is the wonderful thing. When you're selling talent, you have to sell the unique attention getter. The identified point. Here, you've got to sell the experience, and it's got to be shared. It's got to be shared. You know, you cannot share the expected rewards of masturbation to the 35-6. You can't. You know, it says, alone? Alone? No. Someone can watch, right? You know? No, yes, the gods love a good joke. So collaboration, so it's one of the things to understand about selling expectation. Have you ever seen these couple testimonials? We tried it and it worked. It fulfilled our expectations. Oh, yeah, good for you. Okay. Oh, Lord. The 12th game. You know, the 12th gate is the manifesting heart of romance. And Here is where the devil buys your soul. Right? You want a heavy gate. Here's where the devil buys your soul. Sneaks into your soul and sings you a song. And then the devil says to you, you want to sell it to me? I'll buy it. Right? There are enormous amount of human beings that make a living romancing the soul. You know, they try to overwhelm your soul. If they overwhelm your soul, their music is in your head. You buy their music, you buy into their story, you buy into their package. They simply take you over. Third line is confession, the process of self-analysis, the recognition of inadequacies and the purging of unjustified vanities. The expression of inadequacies in social interaction that leads to self-analysis and caution. A perverse and often exaggerated self-hatred. You see, I'm here to romance those that hate themselves. See, I am so much in love with me that it's contagious. You know? And in a way, I try to buy your soul. You know, I tell you, if you pay money, you know, you're finally going to fulfill the destiny of your personality, which is your soul. And then you enter into things, heart and soul. You enter into things with a deep passion. You know, there's an enormous seductiveness in the romance and the selling of romance. You know, if you look at the catalogs in bookstores, and you look at what sells more than anything else in the English-speaking world, are romance novels. And not good ones, eh? Just romance novels. Kinds of things where you find out about a writer who wrote 370 in her lifetime. You know, banged out, you know, one a month or one every 2 weeks. There's all kinds of these being. The people that sit and watch soap operas. You know, the people who are, you know, who dream of love boats. And when you capture somebody's soul, you can get them to participate in anything. Anything. It's one of the most dangerous of all selling. How do they attract attention? Through art. Let us go to money, honey. 45. The natural and generally beneficial attraction of like forces. The 45 understands something. It understands that for every product and service there's a client. You know, it's the same thing as understanding your design. You know, for every gate there's a receptor. There's always that. But it's also something else. The theme of the 45 is exclusion. Exclusion. And this is one of the things to understand about the way in which we have naturally developed our corporate cultures, is that they've been based on exclusive power centers. You know, it's like the joke in the corporate world about the key to the executive bathroom. You know, you finally make it when you get the key to the executive bathroom. You know, you finally make it when you get into the inner circle, you know, when you get your seat on the Politburo, you know, when you finally get into the cabal itself. And there is a great deal of suspicion that comes from the collective and individuality about such cabals. They don't particularly like them. And yet this is the natural ruler of the material plane. We know that the 45th gate is deeply possessive and the only voice of having and not having. And obviously we attract attention in two ways. We can attract the attention of those who have by offering them things they don't have that they can afford to buy. And we can attract the attention of those who don't have by trying to get them to a place where they do have. It's all about having, and it's all about attracting attention to it. One of the deep responsibilities of the 45 is to make sure that its organization is kept up to date, that is educated. But this exclusion is very, very important. Now, one of the things to recognize about exclusion is that if you read the line, it's about something else as well. And it tells you something about the nature of the dynamic of business, which is fundamentally organic. The line is the ability when excluded to take whatever measures are necessary to dissolve the antiquated form and to accept even humiliation to achieve inclusion. Now, what that really is about is that if you're outside of the inner circle, nothing says you have to stay there permanently. You know? And we have this horrible thing, it's called brown nosing. Do you all know what brown nosing is? That's when you're sticking your nose up the boss's ass. Oh, it's awful, but it's true. There's always a brown noser, somebody outside the inner circle who goes, I'll do anything you want. You want all the members of that factory killed? Okay, I'll do it. Whatever you like. And one day they get that phone call that says, well, we'd like you to come into the inner circle now. There are a number of, I don't want to get into historical things, but there are many very interesting examples of that. You know, the reality is that there is always the potential to move from the outer circle in, but the only way that you can get in is that you have to go as far as humiliation. I mean, you know, the corporate world is deeply, deeply tribal. It is the root of the tribe. It is the OC16 transauric primal cellular structure. It is the thing, the primary gene group. And all business will always, always be run this way. The difference between the included and the excluded can change, but it creates problems. The German economy is an example, in which from the post-war socialism that unions were provided seats on boards of directors. Boy, in the end, is that ever a disaster? It's just a disaster. It doesn't work. And so it's one of the things to see that if you come up from the shop room floor and you eventually make it to the board on your own merits, that's something else. That's something else. But those who are naturally excluded shouldn't be included. And of course, selling this is quite a job. You know, because this is all about how to run modern enterprise and how to control your tribe, how to make the tribe functional, and in the end, how to attract attention for your tribe as a whole. My tribe's better than your tribe. My tribe has more than your tribe. You know, my tribe's better than your tribe. And you can see that that is natural for us in our cultural development. And it is natural for us in the way in which our businesses develop. So it's something to recognize. And it doesn't matter whether you're a huge conglomerate, you know, or you're a small business. You know, one of the most difficult places for exclusion is in the small business. Because in the small business, everybody feels like they're a part of it. It's usually a pentadynamic, and they all feel like they're included and should be included in everything. You know, how much you earn, and And it goes on and on and on and on and on. It's very important to understand the theme of exclusion leads to more efficiency, and everybody ends up making more. Everybody. Everybody. One little thing that I want to add underneath quietly, because I don't want people who have the 45th gate to be beaten to death in this classroom, is that this is where taxation comes from. Those who are on the inside, are different in the way in which they're taxed, and those on the outside. Anyway, how nice. Let's move along to the 56th gate, and let's talk about how we express salesmanship, attention getting, okay, because it's all under attention getting. We have three ways of getting attention. We get attention by displaying the facts. We get attention by telling a story. And we get attention by expressing uniqueness. And you can see in marketing, for example, that we have all of those examples on television every day. And I'm only talking about just these three gates of the throat pointed upwards. So we have three basic ways of getting attention. When we're dealing with the 56th gate, dealing attention is telling a story. And you can see in so much television advertising is that they try to make what they want you to be attracted to part of a story. They want to get you into the story. It's the story that's going to get you to the product. To the point now that we have films like the recent James Bond, in which advertisers have actually paid for, material, advertising products to actually be placed very clearly within the context of the film so people can see the products being used in the story without any sales pitch. It's very powerful. If James Bond is using a certain brand of gin, there are certain people at the subconscious level that will have an impact. It will get some attention for that product. You have that in America with rappers. You have rappers who like to, make themselves, again, adornment style. They like to buy the most expensive of everything. And they have become incredible spokespeople for, the most outrageously priced items. And you see these items, they're wearing them in their music videos. You see it on MTV. They're driving a Humvee and they're wearing a fur coat, and they got that specific, scotch in their hand. And everybody sees it and people want to have the same thing. It's very powerful in the telling of the story. Stability through movement. The perpetuation of continuity through the linking of short-term activity. And telling stories is about alienation. It's about eliminating alienation. You don't want people to be on the outside. You want to bring them in. You want to make them self-sufficient. And this can often prove overbearing. This is one of the things about the sales pitch, particularly the story sales pitch. Let me tell you how this works. Oh, Jesus. No, I don't want to. How much does it cost? Forget the pitch, right? When I was living in Sedona, I used to get quite often these teleprompter, tele people, they telemarketers, they call you up on the telephone and they want to tell you a story. They have a pitch. They want to interest you, and I would put the telephone down and go away and do things and come back. They'd still be working. Telling you their story, they're getting their story out. The drive to control and be the focus of expression, and the drive to control and focus others to that. Storytellers are great. And these are pitch people. These are abstract pitch people. And what they're going to say is, look, this refrigerator is incredible. My mother used to have this other model. And we always had a problem. I'm tired of having a fridge that the light's always off inside and so forth and so on. And then we got this new fridge. Blah, 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 blah. And it's always some kind of a story. It's this kind of friendly banter. It seems like it's innocuous, conversational. By the way, they'll tell you all sorts of things and then suddenly they'll say, by the way, I sell insurance. And it's like, oh, fuck. Oh, is that what you were doing to me? Jesus. Jesus. No, I was just trying to stimulate you. You know, stimulate you with a story. This is Jesus telling parables. Great way to sell. You tell a parable. You don't wag your finger at him and say, don't be stupid fucks. You know, it wouldn't work. You know, so you tell this parable about fish and sheep and I don't know, you name it. And all these people are sitting there and they're going along for the story. And then the guy shuts up and they're all sitting there saying, what was that about? You know, he got our attention, but, and then there's somebody saying, well, he was telling, you know, let me explain to you what he was saying. You know, he was saying that you should really be a better person. Oh, wow, good. Why didn't he just say that in the first place? You know? Save all that storytelling. Well, I went down to the sea. You know, I was in the desert. Who gives a fuck? You know? Yeah. 40 days and 40 nights. Give me a break. I don't need the story. What happened, Harry? You know, did something interesting happen? Get to the point, right? No. It's one way of selling. You know, how many gurus sit and you know, and everybody's going, wow, what did he say? It must have been important. I mean, after all, he said it, you know? Okay, so you say. The 62, let's go to the other side. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Caution, patience, and detail produce excellence at a limitation. Right? Do you ever watch shopping TV? See, I'm a surfer. I watch everything. And I've got 5 shopping channels that I can peruse. Eh? And they have this interesting thing. They have a panel side of the screen. And the panel gives you what it is, gives you the price, and it gives you a whole list of things that it is. You know, it's got this and 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 this. And these are people that sell you something on detail. You know, it's like you go in, it's like me, you know. I go in to buy something. Basically, I'm an impulsive individual, you know, I'll just buy it. You know, I see it, I buy it. I have sort of an idea of what it is. But if you got a salesperson that comes up to me and starts rambling off all the things that it is, I want to choke them to death. You know? I mean, it's like going in to buy a car. I don't want to know how it works. I don't care. I don't want to know how many miles to the gallon, you know, how many different positions the seat goes in. I mean, I've actually had a car salesman spend 10 minutes telling me about the wonders of the seat. The seat, I don't give a fuck, is it comfortable? You know? Yeah, moves this way, moves this way, moves this way, and you go this, and you can do that, and you can do it. Does it drive? You know, I mean, will it take over for me? You know, it's like people who will tell you about their computer and they won't say he or she is fine. They will say, well, I've got 3,216, and I've got this, and it's got an 18 PPS, and it's got a 1944, and the DRAM is like over there, and the RAM is over here, and they go on and on and on. And the thing that's amazing is they sell consumer books. Have you ever seen consumer comparison books? I mean, this is a big thing in America, eh? That is, you got a book, and they put, you know, toasters. One would think that a toaster is a toaster is a toaster, right? They have 780 toasters that they compare through 75 categories. I mean, there are people who won't buy a toaster unless they read that magazine. They're on it. Oh, Oh, it's incredible. And you can only sell them that way. You can't be a 56 and say, I had this thing with my toaster. You know? Every time. You can't do that. You go into, well, it has this, you know. And so if you want to sell the facts, there are people who will buy only that. You know, basically I buy a computer on looks. I mean, seriously, folks, you know, I have my limitations. You know, that's a pretty one. What the hell do I know about how it works? I don't know. You know, I find out a month later that it doesn't have a function I needed. You know, and then I have to pretend that I know what I'm asking for when I tell the person that I need this function. And they talk to me in a language that's for detail people. I don't know what they're talking about. They say, well, do you have a UBS? I don't know. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. I think they're insulting me most of the time, you know? I don't know. Facts. Sell them the facts. See, There 1/3 of human design market is made up of explaining that there are 8 billion things you can do with this knowledge. And they're happy. Oh, look. You know? The third line is discovery. A genius for the unusual, found in the details. You know? I mean, selling details is such a trip, eh? And you can lie so good with details. I mean, you can lie so good. You know? Let me give you the details of my business plan. Oh. You know, it's one of these books that's 785 pages long. It's filled with every detail conceivable to man, and none of it is ever paid any attention to. But you sell it right away. Wow, is that ever detailed? I can't even run my TV anymore. You get a manual like this. You know, you got your remote control in your hand. Oh, money's funny. Oh, Lord. Can I go yet? I may not get it back. Oh, Lord. There's nothing like the 4323. The 23rd gate. 23rd gate is explanation. Amorality. See, business isn't moral. I mean, it's not a moral enterprise, and it's there in the 23rd gate. It tells you very clearly, this is not about morality. It isn't, where the weak are killed and eaten. It's not about morality. Kill the competition. They're weak, stamp on them, eliminate them. Ain't no morality. The awareness and understanding which leads to the acceptance of diversity. The third line is about individuality. It's about the independent expression that is not by its nature detrimental to others. By its nature, it's not detrimental. In its practice, it may be. Very clearly, it may be. And it's one of the things to see is that you cannot be morally based to be caught in the new. You have to have a different kind of openness to be caught in the new. Because when the new comes in, it's like people in the very beginning who said to me about human design, it was dangerous. But they meant it in a very negative sense. You know, the secret police, the CIA. You know, they immediately got into a moral question about it. And moral questions about people who deserved the knowledge or didn't. You know, moral questions about who should do this and who should, you know, and on and on and on, what this really means. And, you know, people who were upset that there were detriments, you know, all of that stuff. Vitality and personal power that can engender jealousy but not threat. And, you know, this is one of the things about success, is that success creates jealousy. It does. It breeds jealousy. I mean, I know that. I lived in a tree here. And I have friends of mine who were friends of mine when I lived in a tree, and their life hasn't improved much better than that. And mine has. Very different. Some of them doesn't make any difference to them. Others, it does. Success is something that will always naturally breed jealousy. And the jealousy leads to a moral statement, and the moral statement is, why them? Why not me? Why them? And they're not better than me, so why should they get it? And you get into all of this moral stuff, and you get into all the basic jealousy and all of the stuff that goes with it. And it's one of these things about the nature of bringing the new into the world, is that when you bring the new into the world, you're also destroying other things. In the end, human design will do to astrology what Rome did to Carthage. You know, it's just the way it is. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of people for a lot of millennia who have taken great joy in that knowledge. And yet all things pass. You know, it's simply, and it's not about this or that, it's just the way things are, and it's the way things work. So it's something to understand about the expression of the new, and the risks that come with introducing the new is that the old feels threatened. I mean, think about the people who were making fax machines. Jesus. You know, I mean, well, that didn't last long. I mean, yes, people still have faxes, you know, but it's like, you know, it's like the people that invested in 8-track tapes. You know, I mean, wow, whack, whack, whack. No, you know, life goes on. You know, and how they resented the new technologies. You know, I can remember the arguments about, you know, how listening to a long playing record, you know, with a needle with dust on it, with grooves that have been, you know, worked over a few times, that somehow that was better fidelity than you were going to get with, you know, some digital recording. They were always saying, oh, but digital recordings are flat. I had so many musician friends of mine who say, no, we got to do it on tape. It's flat when it's digital. Give me a break. You know, there's this deep resentment to the new because the new creates problems. If you bring globalization to a country, if you bring a new way of organizing business and affairs, old ways are destroyed, which means people lose their jobs. It means their lives get a certain amount of dislocation. It means the way in which their society as a whole function is transformed. It's not like everybody, you know, this is the whole thing about the new. The moment that the new emerges, it's very, very attractive, but it can become, if it survives, very threatening. Very threatening. Very threatening to all the things in the anarchistic sense that with amorality can be destroyed. It's not like Billy Gates was sitting there saying, oh, gee, it's not right to replace the typewriter. You know, give me a break. You know, or to replace all the typewriter manufacturers. You know, whatever happened to Remington? What happened to Remington Rand? You know, where did they go? You know, the typewriter world is gone. Very short-lived, by the way. Boom and bust. In a time of the new, wow, things come and go quickly. You know, think about all of those new personalities that emerge. You know, again, the throat center, all these new personalities that emerge. You know, the one hit person. You know, people who had #1 songs. You know, if I collected all the #1 songs over the last 50 years from one hit people, most of us wouldn't know who the hell they were. Don't even remember who they were. You know, And this is the world of business in the 21st century. You know, you can really see that to find continuity and depth is very difficult. You know, you have to have a really, really, really good product. You have to have a really, really, really good service. And after all, the oldest business is service. After all, it's the oldest business is service. And it's the one thing that we've been able to constantly renew until we get to a point where we even say we're living in a service society, a service-oriented society where so many people are making their living out of services. So, you know, when you're dealing with the new, you must recognize something, that when the new finally is able to manifest, when the new is finally able to be explained to the whole, and when the new takes hold, that there is going to be moral resistance. I mean, human design has yet to meet the moral resistance of religion yet. Wait. I mean, we'll all see it. We'll all see it. It's going to emerge, because human design now is really breaking through into the collective consciousness, and it will eventually get to that point where the paranoia will start. You know, this is a threat. This is a threat to psychology. This is a threat to holistic healing. This is a threat. It's a threat. You know, it's a threat to certain esoteric areas. It's a threat. You know, and ultimately it's a threat to, you know, the spiritual, mystical, religious infrastructures. And the moment they begin to see that it's not just one of the things on one of the pages of one of the magazines, when it begins to become something that begins to dominate, you wait and see the morality that will come out. You know, well, this isn't good. How can this be good? You know, look at this guy who brought it. That's all, folks. Okay. Awareness centers. We already know that in terms of the not self, in terms of conditioning, that awareness centers are very, very powerful centers of conditioning. That is, they are very powerful representatives of the not self. When you're dealing with an open awareness center, you're dealing with very, very profound not self strategies. Dealing with the splenic center, where we're going to start, everything about the spleen in terms of the open spleen is about holding on to what isn't good for you. This is the strategy of the splenic not self, holding on to what isn't good for you. And so it is something that becomes very obvious in terms of the marketing that is associated with the spleen. It's all about making people feel good. It's a feel-good center, and you're selling feel-good. And you're selling feel-good by convincing people to hold on to you because you're bad for them, but it's good for you. Yeah, and selling people on what they can let go of because it isn't good for them, so that you can replace it with what you think is good for them, and so forth and so on. And so we have this this huge industry, because it's a huge industry, that has arisen out of the open spleen. We're going to start with the 18th gate. We're going to start with collective process. We all know that, you know, the 18th gate carries with it a deep fear of authority, holding on to your fear of authority, or selling the fear of authority is all part of the marketing of the 18th gate. Vigilance and determination to uphold and defend basic and fundamental human rights. That's actually what the 18th gate is all about. It's about human rights. And that's why the 18th gate begins with challenging the authority of its parents. In other words, it's about establishing integrity and respect in the evolving process. But it tells you something thematically about the nature of the gate of correction and the nature of trying to get people to stop holding on to things, or to let go of things, is that you have to be a zealot. I mean, that's the 18.3. That's the zealot, the energetic obsession to clean house. To clean house. You know, stop holding on to your dirty household. Buy our vacuum cleaner. You know, clean house, and hold on to our vacuum cleaner for dear life, clean house. So one of the things to understand about the 18th gate is that everything about the establishment of human rights, everything about it, is about teaching people what not to hold on to. If you're supporting a society that is abusing your rights, you're holding on to something that isn't good for you, and then of course you'll end up with a political response to that. It's interesting that out of the 1858 going up to the 4816, you have, for example, the protest song. These kinds of things in which talent is used, it's like Hollywood people standing up and, saying no war. It's trying to use your talent in order to bring about a correction. But you have to be a zealot. You have to be a zealot. In other words, you can't clean house unless you clean the house completely. No sense leaving shit under the carpets. If you're going to clean the house, you have to clean it completely. And of course, this is the real sales pitch of, give that up, absolutely, and do this, it's really about the only way, in that sense, in which one can be cleansed. So, the zealot is the obsessed pitch, and the obsessed pitch person. You really have to see that in order to sell correction, you have to be almost fanatical. That is the nature of zealotry. When we move to the 28th gate and we move to the individual process, 28th gate is the deep fear within us of purposelessness. And so, human beings hold on to things that they struggle with that will not bring them to the fulfillment of their purpose, but they are simply caught in the struggle. And one of the things about the 28th gate is that the 28th gate empowers concern. 28th gate transforms, for example, integration. Transforms it from being totally absorbed in its selfishness to being open to circuitry, to being open to being available as an empowering source or being empowered itself. So the 28th gate has a social aspect to it. However, one of the things to understand about the 28th gate is that this is where you get the selling of purpose. The selling of purpose. And it's so interesting because the third line is adventurism. Now I'll talk about that in the business sense in a moment, but the marketing is more interesting to me. The marketing is, you're lost in your life, take a vacation in Ibiza. Have an adventure. Go out on that adventure, and maybe you're going to find something new in yourself. And the whole travel industry, the whole travel industry is rooted on this, you need an adventure. Now we have, adventures that are really tailored for us.